Hi, my name is Veronica Stach. I'm from Ontario, Canada, and I'm a chastity missionary. Three years ago, if you were to tell me that I was going to be a chastity missionary or a chastity speaker, I would never have believed you. I grew up Catholic. My parents always took me to church every Sunday. But my relationship with God was a lot about taking and asking for things. And one thing that I always asked God for was a relationship. As a young girl growing up, my life was all about relationships, and I just really wanted to be loved. And my relationship with God was definitely not the most important. And I wanted to fill this void in my heart with human things, with things that the world offered that were temporary. I didn't realize that the only being that can fill that void was God. And so I got into relationships as a young girl and not even understanding what love was. And when these relationships ended, I realized that I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know whose I was. I didn't know that I was a beloved daughter of God. And these relationships were physical relationships. I didn't understand what God had created me for, that God had created me for such an epic love. And I felt a tug in my heart after my second relationship ended. I was so lost. I wanted to turn to the world, to alcohol, and to the lifestyle that the world tells you you should get into when trying to get through a broken heart. And instead, I felt a tug in my heart to go to this retreat. Something was calling me, and I felt like God wanted me to get to know Him better. And the topic of this retreat ended up being chastity and theology of the body, which I didn't know at the time, but was something that I really needed in my life. And so I went on this retreat. It was a New Year's retreat, and I was angry. I didn't want to be there. I was angry at God. I was thinking, God, if you exist, then why did you allow for these things to happen? Why did you allow for my heart to be broken? Why did you allow certain people to walk into my life? And, why did you allow for these experiences if you love me and you exist and you're all-knowing? And so I had this anger in my heart, but I always believed that there was a God. I just felt like He had abandoned me. And so when I went on this retreat, I was angry that I was at this retreat, but I really had nobody to be angry at but myself. And so that's why I forced myself to go. And so I remember we had to do a 3-hour adoration. And before this adoration, we had a guest speaker come in and talk about the love he had for his wife and his chaste relationship. And that was the first time that I had heard a man speak that way about a woman. And that piqued my interest. That opened my heart a little bit. And I thought, wow, I want to be loved in that way. And maybe this retreat isn't so bad. Maybe this is what I needed after all. And maybe God did want me to come here to heal and become the woman that I wanted to be. And so this 3-hour adoration was announced, and I thought, oh my goodness, 3 hours of adoration, how am I going to do that? And for the first hour of this adoration, I was angry, and I thought, I am not participating. And so I sat there and I thought about other things. I doodled in my book. I didn't want to talk to Jesus. I didn't want to talk to God. I was mad at Him. In the second hour, I got bored of that. And so I started to really lay it all out. I started to really talk to God and say, this is what I'm mad about. This is what I'm sad about. This is what hurt me. This is what I don't understand. And the more I started saying that, as the third hour hit, I became so tired with letting everything out of my system, in my mind, and in my prayer. I became so tired, and I had said everything I needed to say. And in that moment, the band started playing a song called Lord, I Need You. And in this moment of hopelessness, and I was just drained, I looked up at the Blessed Sacrament, and they started playing the song Lord, I Need You. And it was as if when they said those words, Lord, I need you, it was like my heart, with all its guards down, uttered those words subconsciously. And the second that my heart said, Lord, I need you, as I looked up at the sacrament, it was like my heart was just flooded with this warmth, and as if it had been colored in. And I was just overcome with with this sensation of being loved and embraced, and I just broke down and I started sobbing. But the sobbing, it wasn't a sad sobbing, it was this sobbing of feeling like I was coming home. And the only way I could explain it is, I know that in that moment I felt like the prodigal daughter coming home and having her loving father take her in his arms and say, I'm just so glad you're home. I felt like a little baby, in her father's arms. And that's the only way I know how to explain this moment of really feeling God's love for the first time and letting it flood my heart. And I would say that that was my moment of reversion and realizing that all along God was right there. And while I was saying, God, where were you? Don't you love me? It was really me being blind to his helping and loving hand saying, don't do that. I love you. Don't go that way. Don't go down that path. And I was just too stubborn as a human to want to accept God's way and trust in him. And instead I wanted to do my way. And so it was like in that moment, I finally saw the truth and realized that he was there all along. And one of my favorite poems, it's called Footprints in the Sand, is there's two sets of footprints walking on a beach, and it's supposed to represent you and Jesus walking right next to you, and then suddenly there's only one set of footprints. And so the man says, God, in the times that were hardest for me, why did you abandon me? And there's only one set of footprints. And God says, it's in those times that I carried you. That's why there's only one set of footprints. And that poem all of a sudden came back to my mind, and I realized that God was carrying me all along. That was the moment in my life where I think I turned my life around 180 degrees. And I decided, first of all, I want to strive for chastity. I want to be loved in the way for which God created me, and I want to rebuild myself. I want to be a woman of God. And it is a journey every single day, but 3 years ago, I decided I want to be the woman that God created me to be. And I allowed God to rebuild me slowly and put those broken pieces of my heart back together. And I imagined the woman that I want to be. And ever since then, with God by my side, with God taking the wheel, I've allowed him to steer me in that direction. And sometimes, I still go off the path and I don't go down the path that I'm supposed to, but it's beautiful because God is always there to reroute me like a GPS back on the right track. And I could truly say that the prayer of my heart for the last 3 years has been, Jesus, I trust in you. Less of me and more of you. And that's been something that I've been repeating every single day since that day, and just saying, Jesus, take the wheel. And I'm amazed at how far I've already come. And today, 3 years later, I'm a chastity missionary because it's never too late, because our God is such a merciful God. And no matter what you've done or where you've been, God is just so forgiving, and he's always ready to welcome you home. And so I decided to embark on this journey to rebuild myself with God by my side. And I did this by starting to ask myself questions like, who am I? Whose am I? Right? I'm a daughter of God. I'm a daughter of the King. And who am I? I started thinking, what are my deepest desires? What are my gifts that God has given me? Because every single one of us is so unique, so specifically knit in our mother's womb. There's never ever been anybody like us. There's nobody like us now. And there will never ever be anyone like us in the future. And so each of us has such a specific purpose in this world. And so I decided to embark on that journey of rediscovering who God created me to be. And I started thinking, what are the people that inspire me? I started to surround myself with people that had qualities within them, like humbleness and humility and love and gentleness and patience. I started surrounding myself with these people because those were the qualities that I wanted to have, and those were the qualities that I wanted to see in myself as a woman of God 2 years from now, 1 year from now, 5 years from now. And I really encourage you to embark on this journey and ask these questions with God by your side and always telling God to steer you in the right direction. And one of my favorite quotes from St. Catherine of Siena is be who you were created to be, and you will set the world on fire. And ever since I've given my life to God 3 years ago and allowed him to use me as an instrument, it's been beautiful what he's been able to do with me. That he uses me every day as an instrument to spread the word of authentic love, chastity, and his great love for us to youth every single day. That I've been able to lead retreats, and I look back and I'm just amazed what the Holy Spirit can do with a sinner like me, you know. And we're all called to be saints. Every single one of us, you are, I am, no matter what we've done. And I am so blessed for that moment in my life that I was able to realize that. And I'd like to encourage you to seek what God has in store for you.
Really with pleasure, through the intercession of our Mother, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and may God bless us and keep us constantly under his blessing, he who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you.
Shalom World, God's own channel.